Brutalism emerged in the 1950s as it was heralded as a post-war transitional style, which initiated the modernist movement in architecture, bridging early modernism and late 20th century design. This brought transformation in the design thinking of architects, as many were seeking practical and efficient housing solutions to aid public infrastructure. Architects like Le Corbusier, with projects such as the Pessac housing, envisioned dwellings as mass-produced machines for living, tailored to the demands of modern society. Much like the reference to animator and filmmaker Hayao Miyazaki's machine-like design of Howl's moving castle home. However, this industrialized approach to design sparked critical debate. Whether could such rigid and standardized forms of housing truly meet human needs? Housing is intrinsically linked to identity, habit, and adaptation. Therefore, can these mass-produced machines-like forms be able to respond to occupant well-being and social needs? Can these brutalist forms be designed from a human-centric focus? The post-war economic boom in the 1970s, particularly in America, surged in consumer culture, which was driven by rapid growth in income and aggressive marketing. This shift had spread globally, which increased and elevated the public expectation of architecture, demanding more innovation beyond the function of forms. In response to the consumer demand, the new Brutalism style developed, which aided to balance mass production of architecture and efficiently focused on human-centric design. The key principles of the new Brutalism housing style included dynamic circulation, prioritizing movement and spatial flow, open and adaptable spaces, enhancing urban and environmental connectivity, varies unit configurations, incorporating split levels and flexible layouts, optimize living conditions, maximizing natural light and ventilation, use of raw and diverse materials, enhancing structural expression through materials, integrated mechanical systems, ensuring precise environmental control. By addressing these principles of new Brutalism, architects and designers attempted to establish a new architectural language that consciously tested the human-centric design philosophy by emphasizing the connection between occupants and their environment. Notable architects who participated in projects that focused on human-centric design in Brutalism were Le Corbusier, Unité d'Habitation, Marseille, France, 1952. Moshe Safdie, Habitat, 67, Montreal, Canada, 1967. Team 10, Allison and Peter Smithson, Robin Hood Gardens, London, UK, 1972. John Andrews, University of Canberra. Student Housing, Egg Cartons, Canberra, Australia, 1973. Le Corbusier's Unité d'Habitation, located in Marseille, France, built in 1952, is a project that demonstrates modernist brutalist architecture designed with a human-centered focus. As originally, Le Corbusier wanted to free housing from unnecessary ornamentation to make the mass production of housing possible. However, as the new Brutalism movement developed into the international style, his view of housing shifted to focus upon the human experience within living spaces. For this project, his vision was to design a vertical city within a single building, where facilities such as residential units, communal spaces, and services were integrated to create a coherent environment that addresses both housing needs and social interaction. This approach to design encourages the notion of collective living, where residents could live in a self-sustaining environment that offered a sense of community and convenience. The highlight of the project was the concept of garden in the sky, aimed to showcase the rooftop, which was designed as a community communal space with gardens, playgrounds, and running tracks, which offered residents a place for social gathering and recreation, as this is crucial for urban living. Le Corbusier's aim to combine vertical density with a human-centric design approach resulted in a highly engaging, livable, and socially engaging housing facility, which revolutionized architectural housing design and urban planning internationally. Habitat 67, designed by Moshe Safdie in 1967 Montreal, Canada, was a project that reimagined urban living and enhanced brutalist human-centric design through modular, community-focused architecture. This project intended to aid the housing shortage issue by proposing a high-density village environment, an alternative to traditional apartment blocks.
The buildings of the 60s and 50s, or wishing for the suburb if they could afford it. And I came to the conclusion we've got to reinvent the apartment building. We need to find a way of doing apartment buildings where you have the quality of life of a house, or we need to pile up houses one on top of the other instead of thinking of them as apartment blocks. And they ought to have gardens, and they ought to have streets, and they ought to have multiple exposures rather than, this kind of cell block. And I bought out all the Legos in Montreal at the time because we built many, many alternatives. The 2-to-1 brick was perfect. It didn't have the overhang that we eventually had in the box, but it did allow you to do all the cluster studies and was very convenient.
Safdie's concept involved combining the brutalist geometric forms of 354 prefabricated concrete units and orienting them in a village-like arrangement. This allowed for each unit to receive natural lighting, ventilation, and have its own private rooftop garden. A defining feature of this project is the balance between standardization and individuality. As noted earlier, each unit was prefabricated and mass-produced, yet the placement and stacking of units create unique living spaces, which allowing for variations in occupant experiences interacting with the form. The arrangement of the units softened the raw brutalist materiality of the structure through interconnected pedestrian pathways, community terraces, greenery and courtyards, which also fostered privacy and social neighborly interactions between occupants. Habitat 67 was an experimental prototype project. However, given its success, it is a permanent residential community that evidences brutalist architecture can be both functional and human-centric. This project remains as an icon symbol of brutalist utopian urbanism that responds to human needs, sustainability, and mass-produced efficiency. Team 10 was a collective group of architects that formed in the 1950s, and they were known for advocating human-centered approach to architectural design, along with critiquing the modernist movement's focus on functionalism. Team 10 believed that architecture should engage with human needs and rejected the early modernist movement's abstract of one design fits all. Allison and Peter Smithson were key British architects in the Team 10 group, well known for their work on the Robin Hood Gardens, a social housing project in London, 1972, later demolished in 2017. This was a pioneering brutalist affordable housing project. The complex's concept was street in the sky and consisted of 213 apartments that created two long, parallel blocks where pedestrians' walkways and communal spaces were elevated above ground, which enabled occupants to view the open green garden spaces that creates a sense of privacy, security, whilst promoting social interactions. However, despite the innovative design, the project faced criticism regarding its hard, unwelcoming concrete aesthetic, lack of livability in relation to its maintenance issues. Nonetheless, despite the demolition of the project, Robin Hood Gardens remains as an exemplar project which evidences modernist ideals in housing, with a focus on collective living and social space. The Smithsons' design was meant to provide not only functional homes, but also foster a sense of community and social interaction, reflecting their human-centered approach to architecture. Now, shifting into the Australian context, the notion of brutalist and new brutalist design ideas was brought into Australia by Harry Seidler. However, an iconic new brutalist human-centered project is the Egg Cartons University of Canberra Student Residences, Canberra, Australia, designed by John Andrews, 1973. This project is significant to new brutalist human-centered design as it reimagines student accommodation into a community-based living, as opposed to functional dormitories. The Egg Cartons project was essential to the development of Canberra as an educational hub, as affordable and livable communal spaces were required to accommodate student living, aiming to provide both private, secure, and social spaces. The residences utilized a modular concrete construction which was mass-produced and replicated throughout the design to create a campus village environment. The design integrated shared kitchens, split-level common areas, and communal landscaped courtyards, which encouraged residents to encounter spontaneous social interactions whilst providing quiet study nooks. Defining features of the project are the spatial arrangement of the modular units and its relation to the pedestrian-focused layout, the interplay of light and shadow, and use of elevated landscape. Andrews used skylights, recessed light well to create dynamic natural lighting internally throughout the day. The material choice of raw exposed brutalist concrete further aided the thermal comfort in winter season to retain heat, while cross-ventilation channels were carved into walls to allow for passive cooling in summer season. The building's sun-facing facades aided in ventilation, which responded to Canberra's climate, hence allowing the design to respond to local conditions. This project demonstrates a coherent amalgamation between new brutalist modular design and human-centric focus. The egg carton residences remain as an example for showcasing the harmony between density, functionality, and community living. The evolution of New Brutalism that initially prioritized efficiency, functionality, and mass production has sparked valid critiques. Can standardized, mass-produced machine-like housing address human needs and social well-being? The answer revealed is through projects such as Unité d'Habitation, Habitat 67, Robin Hood Gardens, and University of Canberra student residences. These projects demonstrated that through various design approaches of combining modern brutalist modular mass-produced forms and human-focused design with adaptable layouts, communal connectivity, and spatial arrangement can enhance the occupants' livability and experience with structures. The success of these projects is evident through their rejection of a one-design-fits-all approach, instead utilizing modularity as a tool for enhancing flexibility, connection, arrangement, and understanding human needs. The debate still stands unanswered, but these case studies affirm that even the most utilitarian forms can embrace a human-centric ethos. It is the designer's thoughtful understanding and desire to intensify the balance between the industrial logic with the vital realities of human life, which results in urban utopias being created and developed. So perhaps New Brutalism's rigidity doesn't suppress us. Instead, it sharpens our longing to reach out, to soften the edges, to use its challenges as a tool to belong, and intensifies our need to connect.